Hi, I'm Dr. Karen Hills Pruden, and look, sister leaders, you know I always say I have a treat for you, and I swear I am not lying. I have a treat for you. I have in the house today Angela Jackson. So, Angela, tell the sister leaders community how wonderful you are, what you do in this space called life.
I'm Angela T. Jackson. I am the CEO and founder of the Jackson Impact Mental Health Solutions. It is a private mental health practice in the state of Tennessee. I started my practice in the heart of the pandemic when I was in the dilemma of having to homeschool and keep on working. So this was a baby that was birthed in the heart of the pandemic. I decided to do a little bit of both. And while I still worked in the community, opportunity availed itself, and I took that leap of faith and started a private practice.
Awesome. So, many times our purpose is birthed out of pain or association. And so, tell me how you got into this mental health space. I love it, by the way, and I recognize that we are all really paying attention to it since the pandemic, even though it was around long before the pandemic, and the need to address it was around long before the pandemic. But tell me how it got on your radar that this may be your purpose in life.
Oh, wow. You've made some awesome points already. And, I started out, I thought about my childhood, different experiences, even as a young adult on into adulthood. And there were spaces where I believed I needed support as far as the emotional perspective, whether it was physical health that impacted the way I was thinking or feeling. And I realized that there was a deficit. There was still a stigma that exists where talking about mental health, one, was just unheard of in certain populations. And then talking about mental health care was still taboo. So I experienced quite a bit of void within my family growing up. So it was nothing new, experiencing certain dysfunctions and wondering why there was no support and why didn't you explain how I should deal with my emotions in certain situations. So even then, I noticed that there was a need. Later on, early 20s, I was diagnosed with a digestive disease. And I remember going to the doctors, being prescribed medication, but there was no support for the anxiety. There was no support for the adjustment to different life changes. And that's when I really noticed that the mental health support was the missing link for a lot of people dealing with chronic illnesses or life adjustments in general. And as we said before, the pandemic was definitely a life adjustment for all of us, and having to face a new normal. You're absolutely right. The need for mental health services existed before then. It had been on the rise. And so there were just so many doors open to launch and pursue. And what I started doing is, one, to become a licensed therapist, I had to be supervised by someone who was licensed, someone who had already been through the process. And so I had a supervisor that I shared my thoughts and ideas with as far as private practice or working within the community, and really zeroing in on Black and Brown communities so that we could interrupt that stigma and normalize the conversation around all of that and get to a place of healing and being able to unpack those things that we've been holding on to. So that's a little bit.
Love that. So, a question. So my mom is a career educator. She retired school teacher of 36 years, retired, and then actually went back, after a year, couldn't even stay retired. But she loves babies. And I remember she specifically worked with special education. So special individuals that require individual educational plan, if
Yes.
they're outside of what is considered the norm. And so I remember hearing my mom say on one occasion that one of her students were too young to be diagnosed with anything, even though her student was exhibiting I guess some symptoms of something, but they were too young. And so that my question for you is, how early can one decide that maybe mental health, at least a mental health consultation, may be something that someone should have? Is there an age limit on it, or is it something that someone needs to be exhibiting? How soon is too soon when it comes to seeking mental health
Th-
professionals?
th- that is that's a great point. I actually worked in the space of early intervention for some time. And so the assessment for children, I'll say birth to 4. There's a different type of an assessment because there's a different type of development that is typical within those ages, even from birth to 5, right? There's stages that come with that development. And so that's why it would be difficult to diagnose a child with a mental health disorder, because some development, right? It could be normal activity. It could be a normal level of that hyperness that just comes with being a kid, right? We talk about the terrible twos. And even personally, as a parent, I always say that a lot of kids experience terrible twos at 3. So with certain diagnoses, it is hard to make that diagnosis before the age of 5. And there is a manual that sort of guides us through that level as far as criteria. So it would say what too young would be regarding a specific diagnosis. But if you notice, for example, like you mentioned, that early intervention, those early stages, when you go and get those primary care visits, it may be 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. When you go get those visits and you notice that they're not meeting milestones, start taking note. If the doctor requests other assessments, that would be the time to make note of that.
Okay, thank you for that, because I always wondered, like, well, what is too early? Obviously, that's too early, but what age is the appropriate age to seek help? So let's talk about religion. So I'm going to reveal something about the way I was raised, and then and how when you know better, you do better later in life. But of course, I was too young to process. So there was a time in my life, we are religious, spiritual individuals. And so instead of giving us the advice to seek professional help in terms of a mental health professional, you would hear the phrase, well, pray about it, pray about it, pray about it. It wasn't pray about it, and it was pray about it. Just pray about it with a period at the end of the sentence. And of course, now I know better. I know that you can pray and also seek the help of mental health professionals. But can you speak a little bit as to how saying just pray about it with a period at the end of the sentence may be limiting individuals or prolonging individuals to stay in a particular state longer than they need to if there is no consideration for the mental health professional assessment involved with prayer? I think we can have both. Again, like I said, I know better and I do better now, but I do recall growing up and hearing adults say he or she do not need to go to whoever the professional was. All they need to do is pray or take them to church. So tell me, have you ever heard that? And tell me, what are your thoughts in terms of people abstaining from seeking the help that they possibly can get in addition to their faith?
Oh, wow. So this is a huge topic. I will say it. You can have God and therapy. You can have your faith and therapy. You know, I can relate to what you're saying. I grew up in a household that was the same way. You don't talk about your problems with other people. We go to church, pray about it. Nobody wanted to be labeled as crazy. And there were, you know, certain scriptures that talked about here's what you're supposed to do if you're experiencing anxiety, right? And you were always directed to trust and pray. But what happens is there's still a little bit of a void there, because if you're talking with someone who says, I don't know how to pray, I don't know what to say, I feel like I'm being held hostage by my own thoughts, right? There's both of those that are necessary. And I see now where a lot of pastors, a lot of spiritual leaders are now becoming licensed therapists or mental health coaches to support, right, those spiritual teachings. And it has been more beneficial today. But as I mentioned before, that stigma that exists, there was always the expectation, even culturally, and I'll say that for Black and Brown communities, that even culturally, we were resilient because of the level of faith that we had before we could read, before we could write, before we were allowed to experience certain things. Maybe there were some injustices as it related to even physical health care, which led to a lack of trust. So I believe that's a part of the root of where that came from. Don't go to that doctor. Therapists, they manipulate you, you know? And, you know, I believe that there's a space, even within the spiritual community, for mental health professionals. There's a scripture that actually references that there's safety in the multitude of counselors, right? You need that ability to unpack and unload some things. There's an aspect where people change their lives. They seek, they accept God into their life, but then there are some things that they yet struggle with from their past that maybe they don't know how to get that breakthrough on their own. So therapy partnered with certain spiritual teachings, and maybe I shouldn't say certain, but whatever that spiritual belief is a benefit, right? Helping people understand the emotions around it, a change of mindset, right? That supports change, that supports greater, that supports that forward-minded perspective. So I can relate to what you're saying. There was always that teaching, you don't go to anybody else. And also, you never know who you're dealing with. Today, you can get a therapist that fits your criteria. You know, when you search for a therapist, it is almost like Burger King. You can have it your way. You can filter. Do you want a Christian therapist? Do you want a believer? I've had people say they don't want someone who's spiritually focused. Well, guess what? That means I'm not a fit. Because I say it up front, I'm a believer, you know, and there are people who want to incorporate scripture in therapy. They want to incorporate prayer, and it's totally up to them. I would not impress a spiritual belief on someone, and that's not a part of their goal, a part of their treatment, you know. There's a lot of things that being solution focused can support a little bit of everybody, you know.
I love that. I love that. So let's switch a little bit to motivating. This is Women's History Month, and so my question is, can you name 2 women who have motivated you in life and describe why they have motivated you in life?
Oh my goodness. Wow, there have been so many. You know, I will say that my top 2 motivational women One is Dr. Lucretia Dangerfield. I referenced her earlier. She was my mentor when I was going through the counselor licensure process, and I had to meet with her monthly. I shared my goals with her professionally. I shared different situations in the moment. It could have been professionally, it could have been personal. But one day I was sharing my goals, and everything I had to say was futuristic. It was, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm planning to do. This is what I'm looking toward. And she stopped me and she said, why can't you do that now? She helped me identify now what was in the moment. And I came up with every excuse under the sun. I have to wait until I get this ready. I have to wait until I get everything into place. And she stopped me again, and she gave me one word that I have literally latched onto, and that is start. She told me to go ahead and start now, because if I start all of this stuff that was, seemingly in my future, if I went ahead and started when the time came, when I was licensed and when, I progressed, I wouldn't have to wait to get ready. I would already be ready.
Yeah.
So she definitely motivated me there, still motivates me. We are still connected, grateful for her. My number two, I would have to say, Lisa Nichols. She is so motivational. I really like how she would tell her story about having $12,
Mm-hmm.
and how she went from, oh my goodness, just she was resilient, having been told never to speak in public, and now she is motivating the masses. And so when I was doing group therapy for people who were recovering addicts, I would use a couple of her videos as tools. And I remember sharing the videos because they were just great examples for mindset shift, change, motivation, and resiliency, and a new start, right? And being an active part of your change. And so I would sit and I would listen to the videos, and I thought to myself one day, I said, wow, this is for me to support the group, but I tell you, it is making a great impression. And so I really appreciate and still are motivated by what she shares and the growth. And it's definitely been instrumental for me being an entrepreneur.
I love that. And I too love that story. And it can resonate with me. There was a time when I didn't have the minimum that was in the bank that you needed to get out for the ATM. And so right. I can, when that was her real life story, but that story resonated with me. And I'm sure quite anybody else who hear it, who's ever just needed to get their money out, but didn't quite have enough at that particular time. And just, I love Lisa Nichols. So that wonderful examples. So let's talk about women and our different roles. So do you feel it is more difficult for a woman to be career oriented? And why or why not? With all of our different roles that we have, can we be focused on our career or our business in addition to the other things that we have to do as women?
So, I believe that there is, oh goodness. So for women, I believe there is a place to be career oriented. I believe that there's a yes, there's also a no to that question. So, as it relates to resiliency, skill, ability, organization, order, creativity, stability, and the list could go on, right? I believe that those are attributes for a career, for a business, for leadership, right? And so that makes that puts women who already have those skills at an advantage to be successful as far as being career oriented. Now, the barriers kind of leads back to a mental health perspective, mindset. If you have, if there are barriers there where you have self-doubt, maybe a level of codependency where you may not initially be a self-starter, but constantly needing the push. And that's okay. Like I said, that might be the case in the beginning, but there are ways to grow and gain the support. But things of that nature, even culturally, like I said before, there was a time where I said, oh, I have to wait till I complete this, or I have to wait till my children are a certain age. That creates a little bit of a barrier. And those are factors that might say, okay, is this person ready to move forward? Is it desire, or is it oh my goodness, pursuit, right? Desire versus pursuit. I have a desire to move forward. Am I taking the steps to pursue? So I would say, with the skills that women have to press forward and to be resilient with all the many hats that we wear, that sets us up for success as it relates to our careers and promotion. And but if there are those who struggle with maybe a lack of confidence and fear, right? That shows up sometimes. That's what communities like this is beneficial for, is for support, is for connecting with other like-minded women, or women who have been in your shoes where maybe fear was a part of the process. And now, hey, once you connect, get what you need, the education, the support system, you're ready to go.
Absolutely. So my final question as we move towards the end of this interview, and I can just talk to you all night long, but I guess I digress. Can a woman be compassionate, empathetic, caring, all those niceties that usually are associated with a woman, and also be strong and decisive and a businesswoman? Can those qualities coexist within the same woman, or do we have to sacrifice one for the other? What are your thoughts on that?
I believe that those attributes of being empathetic, caring in nature, I believe that they can absolutely coexist in the strong, self-starter, self-directed female or entrepreneur. Because in business, we first have to be able to connect and communicate, right? Whether it's a service, whether it's a business, whether you work for a corporation, the ability to communicate and connect is what people are looking at first, right? There's that saying, people, they don't care how much you know, they want to know that you care. So even a strong, assertive woman can show that she cares about the people that she's providing a service to. What that does is create a foundation for a person to, oh my goodness, to offer better quality in their business. You're setting a foundation because there are principles, there are so many different hats, like we've talked about, that you have to wear. There's the consistency. You've got to set a foundation for growth. So there's got to be that part of you that is assertive, that you've got to have that decision-making in place. You don't want to lead solely with your emotions, because you may people please and then put the business at jeopardy or whatever, in jeopardy, something that's not necessarily, in favor for growth or for scaling once you get to that certain point. So the strength is necessary, right? And the caring is also necessary because that's important to be able to connect with the people that you are providing services to. And also that caring level of communication, that empathy, oh my goodness, that says quality assurance, that says, customer retention and growth,
Which is needed for scaling and expansion and longevity and tenure and all those things that we want, whether it's a career or entrepreneurship. So I totally agree with you. So Angela, if you could tell the sister leaders community, if you got anything going on that you want us to support on any event, or how to stay connected with you, and what methodology you want them to use to stay connected with you.
All right. So I will definitely share where you can find me on social media. I tell you, for 2023, it has been my desire to regain my time. So I don't have a list of different events that I am hosting. I am participating in a few things, but you can find me on my website, www.thejacksonimpact.com. That is TheJacksonimpact.com. You can follow me on Facebook at The Jackson Impact. Instagram. Also, my personal page is the Angela T. Jackson. I had to think about that. Mm-hmm. And then also the Jackson Impact, the business page, is also on Instagram as well.
Love it, love it, love it. So thank you so much. And if you happen to chime in the middle of this wonderful interview and you don't know who I am Dr. Karen Hills Pruden, and I am the founder of the Sister Leaders Community Conference and Academy. And Sister Leaders is a community of men and women who are committed to increasing the number of women in senior leadership. We are interested in not only acquisition of those roles, but sustainability. We want women to be able to retain these positions for as long as they so desire. And so we work with them on leading people, leading change using technology and analytics, because everything going into the next 10 and 20 years are going to be STEM related, whether you know it or not. Everything that you do has a facet of STEM to it. Hence why we're going into automation with everything and AI with everything. And so we want to ensure sustainability in leadership. And we just simply want more women to be the best leader that they can be. And so I certainly appreciate you chiming in, and stay tuned for the next interview. Bye.